Hola, Ramiro.
Hola, Patricia, ¿cómo estás?
Bien, bien. Thank you for joining us today.
It's my honor. Thank you for the privilege of being with you and your team, and thank you for your leadership during this very difficult time.
Thank you too. And to everyone out there on our Facebook page, please continue to share the video, and we'll be, Ramiro will be answering a couple questions towards the end. So welcome to Ramiro and welcome to all of you, our Facebook followers out there. Hope you are hanging in there, staying positive, and more than anything, focusing on what is it that you can control during this time. My name is Patricia Mota. For those of you who haven't had an opportunity to meet, I am the president and CEO for HACE, the Hispanic Alliance for Career Enhancements. And our Cafecito con HACE series is aimed to shed a light on a leader, a Hispanic star who is doing amazing work, relevance, and we'll share some facts and shed light on what the work that they're doing specifically now during these times. And before we get started and introduce Ramiro and start our conversation with Ramiro, I want to thank again, as many of you who have been joining our cafecitos, to our supporters at Cafe Ama. So this is the founder, Angelique Sina, of Friends of Puerto Rico, cafeama.com. You want to get your bag of cafecito. And to those of you out there on the Facebook, the first 3 of you to engage and send your email and to share the video that we have today, you'll get your own free bag. But they have a special going on for Mother's Day, Dia de las Madres, right? Because this supports women and children entrepreneurs in Puerto Rico. So very timely and very relevant to what we're discussing today. So like, share, and get folks to become familiar with these efforts. So today, Ramiro, we're talking about businesses and entrepreneurship. And before we get started, since this is Cafecito con HACE, ¿cómo te gusta tu café?
Pues gracias. Me gusta el café fuerte y negro. Soy muy simple con mi café. So I like my coffee black. I learned how to drink coffee later in my 20s. And so I didn't get to really learn about the sugar and the cream and the foam. And so I'm a pretty simple coffee drinker. So I'll just get a black coffee or an americano y me lo tomo solo y es algo que me ayuda a estar más alerto en el día.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing and about your cafecito. And so, one of the things as we've got into this current state that we are, folks, working remotely or folks looking for their next career opportunity or they're in transition, we've been hearing a lot about potentially being a time to start entertaining a business, launching a business for the first time, or seeking into what are some ventures that folks can get into. You being a leader at the United States Hispanic Chamber of Commerce, and also with your own background and expertise, what suggestions or what advice do you have to folks right now regarding that?
Well, it's very clear that when we have economic downturns, which we had 10 years ago with a recession, and then after 9/11 for our country, and even in the 70s and 80s when we had Black Monday with the stock market crash in 87, and then many folks don't remember, but in the early 70s, we had a huge increase in energy costs when the petroleum companies or the countries in the Middle East were controlling most of the energy produced around the world. It really affected our economy. And so when people lose their jobs or they work for a big company and there's downsizing, which is occurring now, unfortunately, because of the virus, it is a very difficult dislocation, but it also forces the opportunity to have someone dream something that they've always wanted, that they never imagined they would step into. And sometimes when you're forced to step into finding and making a living for yourself, that's where entrepreneurship comes in. Something that you're good at, something that you've always wanted to do, but maybe you were a little afraid to do and leave a full-time job and step into. When somebody gives you a severance package, hopefully, or you work someplace for 5 or 10 years and you're out of work immediately, you're going to want to stay active. Si eres trabajadora, siempre vas a ser trabajadora. And so you want to stay busy and you want to provide for your family. So this is the perfect opportunity through these difficult times to venture out. We won't be able to flip the switch during this difficult time, because it'll be like turning the dial to get back in. Most recessions last about 18 months. Patricia, if you go back through history, and that means that we're going to be in a difficult economy probably through the end of 2021 at the earliest now. And so I think it's a great opportunity, though. Through a crisis, there's always opportunity in disguise, and many successful entrepreneurs started during an economic downturn that they were forced to start their own business.
Are you hearing that as well at the chamber, and what, you know, resources, or maybe folks want to start drafting, right, their business plan, or start looking and generating, you know, ideas and maybe connecting with those that have their own businesses? Are there any recommendations or resources that you can share?
I would be happy to. You know, the innovation now is thrust upon us. We knew we were in a different time, and we were working with artificial intelligence and expansion of the internet, and working efficiently, working from home. That had grown with many new business startups to keep costs low and to be doing things that are more driven by one-person businesses. And innovation has come from that. You all know the internet companies that have started in somebody's garage in the old days. Now they're being started at kitchen tables and dining room tables. And the advice I would give people is to do their homework. Patricia, you should never start a business unless it's something you really are good at, have skills at, and want to do. You should never start a business that you know nothing about. So that's the first rule of thumb. Secondly, do your homework. There's so much data now on the internet, census data, that you could look at where you live or where you want to start a business, and you can do a market analysis from home without having to pay anybody of the number of the kinds of businesses you want to start that are within a mile of where you want to have your location be. And of course, today, most businesses are not relying on a market area traditionally like a restaurant, but it's the whole global economy. And so I would say, do your homework and practice your pitch, and also know how to sell your product. There's so many people that are in business right now that may be successful, and we put them in to do business with a Fortune 500 company, or we match them up through procurement, and they may not be able to sell their product in an elevator speech and convince the buyer that they should buy that product. So if you can't sell your own self and your own product, and you don't have your homework done, and you haven't practiced your pitch, it's really hard to be successful no matter what. And so I would say this is the perfect time to do research, do homework, and get ready and find out what you want to do when you're getting ready to start a plan or raise money.
Yeah, thank you, Ramiro. So for those of you out there, you know, submit your questions. We'll be addressing them at the end of this. But also, if you are an entrepreneur, or if you have any resources, please include them in the comments section so we can get those out and visible for folks right now. I'd imagine, you know, Latino being disproportionately affected due to COVID right now, and also being one of the fastest growing in terms of entrepreneurs, Latinas, for example, opening businesses 7 times faster than any other demographic group. I can't even imagine, right, when we come out of this, not only the growth that will come out of it, but then now the flip side is the recovery, right? Currently, we have
Right.
folks that are trying to save their businesses, right? We're currently in the second round of
Right.
funding that's being provided by the SBA of the Payment Protection Plan. And before this, Ramiro, we were talking about what were some key strategies and that some organizations that were able to get funding or not able to get funding. And so what's the state of the Payment Protection Plan as you know it as of yesterday or today, the latest? And then what recommendations, the second part of the question is, what recommendations do you have for folks that are looking to get to this next funding?
Well, the main thing, Patricia, we need to do as Latinos and Latinas is to not take no for an answer. Mm-hmm. So we need to have our own autoestima, our own self-confidence, and be very self-aware that the only way we're going to get pushed around in this marketplace or with these opportunities as an entrepreneur is if you let yourself get pushed around. Nobody pushes you around unless you let them. So yeah. We got to be strong. We got to be self-confident. We got to do our homework. And if you don't have a banker and you didn't get the funding for the Paycheck Protection Program, if you're a small business owner, you need to go out there and be resilient and not leave the bank until you get your loan. If the bank itself is not funding you because you may not be a customer, there are small community banks that have now been opened up. We fought after learning the first 350 billion was already borrowed within 13 days. There's a saying in Spanish, at least I grew up with, el pescado que se duerme se lo lleva la corriente. You can't go to sleep in this marketplace. You're going to have to get going, or else you're going to get washed away. And there's no reason to wait either. I've heard of Latinos and Latinas waiting for the right time. The right time is now. Is go see a community development finance institution or a small business investment corporation. Look up minority lending on the internet. Everything is out there. Or look up community banking and go develop a relationship with a bank. If you don't have one, look for a Latino or a Latina banker on the internet and go see them if there have been good things said about them. I know so many bankers that were also scared and struggling because they didn't know what to ask for in the loan documents. Yeah. So the banks are your friend. They're not your enemy. Right now, and we've been flying this plane since COVID started, and we've been building the plane at the same time. And so everybody's trying to find their way. And my encouragement would be, Patricia, is to go to our website, www.ushcc.com. We have information in English and Spanish. All the resources are there. And there are more than 6,000 banking institutions doing lending. PayPal is doing lending. Intuit is doing lending. You have non-traditional folks now that can do lending through the PPP, and this money's going to run out real quick. The first day of the second round of $310 billion, $50 billion of loans was done in day one. So I think this funding may go quicker, maybe by this Friday or by next Monday or Tuesday. And so we at the Hispanic Chamber have been fighting and knowing that we may need to do a third round of funding, because the main purpose of the program, Patricia, is to keep people employed, reimburse the business owners and their costs, and get the economy back on track. The only thing I would say, the challenge for us is a lot of folks who right now may be shutting their businesses and applying for the PPP. Until we go back to work, there's not enough business really. And then you have employees who have been laid off, who are being called back, who have their children at home also, and they don't have money for childcare, and they can't have somebody come that might obviously have the virus. And so it's a challenge, because people, working adults or entrepreneurs, also have children that are in school right now at home, and it's creating dilemmas for all of us that related to balance and then the Paycheck Protection Program and what it can cover.
Yeah, thank you, Ramiro. And I think it's true, right? As you have to make sure that you are pounding the pavement, making those phone calls, checking in. I think, a couple conversations that I've had with folks, they're like, well, I submitted my application. And I'm like, well, are you calling? Are you checking in? Are you making sure?
Don't wait.
Like the only person that's going to advocate for yourself, for your business, your organization is you, and you need to stay on top of it. I think, Ramiro, one of the things that I mentioned to you prior to going live is that we went from a large institutional bank to a small community bank that was recently SBA approved. As soon as we found out they were SBA approved, we had a relationship there. We went over, and fortunately it worked in our favor to be approved in the first round. So I don't know if that's something to consider, because I know there are smaller banks that are currently or recently newly approved that could be a tactic for folks to outreach and build those relationships with those in banks as well.
Patricia, I'm so glad to hear that story, because that shows your tenacity of finding your solution. And we cannot wait as Latinos or Latinas for somebody to give us the solution. We need to make our own solutions. We're entrepreneurial to begin with. We need to forget about being humble during this time. It's not going to be of any value to anybody to be respectful and humble at the same time, out of necessity and out of food and out of lending or capital. Right now, it's getting to the front of the line and going and finding a community lender like you did, or others. And that's the experience we've had, is that there's a lot of capital out there, a lot of opportunities for capital. The key thing is to be resourceful and to be hungry and to fight for what you need to keep your business surviving. There are 4.5 million Hispanic-owned businesses, according to our data at the United States Hispanic Chamber of Commerce. There are 8 million minority-owned businesses in America and 30 million small businesses. So small business is big business for us. If we don't save these businesses and your business by having you get the capital that you need through community banks or other sources, our economy will really struggle and not go back to where it used to be. We're going to have a new way of working. We're going to use innovation, and obviously things will be different. We're never going back to the way it was. I'm convinced of that. And as you said, we were already, you and your association, HACE, you were already being, innovative and resourceful and efficient. So this has only accelerated that for small businesses because of the social distancing that's required. So I would recommend that people do what you did, is go out and find where you can get the help that you need, because this is our economy, this is our country. 60 million Latinos drive our economy out of the greatest economy in the world. And it's because of us that we need to continue to realize that to recover, it'll be on the backs of small business again, and Latino-owned businesses, because we're on the front lines.
Yeah. Guys, we owe it to our community, right? And to not be humble, and to ensure that we're, especially now, because people are more generous than ever before and are willing to lend a hand. So do not be afraid to ask and to reach out and to ask those questions. And for those of you on the Facebook, please continue to share. We've got a few questions coming in. Before we go into the questions, the United States Hispanic Chamber is a national resource and also has outreach to folks in your own local community. So for example, HACE here in Chicago, we work very closely with our friends at the Illinois Hispanic Chamber of Commerce. So please share in the comment sections if there's a chamber that you work with locally, a point person or a resource locally in your own city or your community that you'd like to share with everyone. So Ramiro, we have a question here in terms of resources, right? And this is too, my last question for you is,
Sure.
How do they get access to the resources? Are they on your website and your webpage? What are some websites, nonprofit and government agencies that can help? And then another one, which I think is very important, resources for Spanish speaking only business owners.
Right. No, it's very clear that, and that's a great question. So I would say our website is in English and Spanish and has all the resources, public sector, meaning SBA, and also private sector. There are a lot of corporations that have also set up grants or small business loan programs using their own money to help. So we have private sector and public sector resources in English and Spanish. Secondly, your local community. You mentioned the great chamber in Illinois, Hispanic chamber that is run by Jaime de Paulo. We have 250 Latino chambers around the country, from Honolulu to Rhode Island, Seattle, down to Miami, and then from McAllen all the way up to Wisconsin. And so estas cámaras, these chambers, they're an economic oasis in their communities. Contact your local Latino chamber. Again, look it up on the internet, or contact us at the US Hispanic Chamber. And it's very important that they realize that there's some private sector programs out there also for their businesses, and then to check with their local municipal government. States like California and Texas and many other states have also put up funding from local government to supplement the limited dollars that are needed that are provided through the Paycheck Protection Program. The key right now, Patricia, is survival. We need to have our businesses to survive. 1 out of every 4 Latino-owned businesses are already temporarily closed. They employ family members, and majority of their workforce are Latinos and Latinas. So it's getting information. Our website, especially for people that are Spanish speaking, we also have a partnership with Telemundo, and we have, if they can go on the Telemundo website also, it's all in Spanish, and we're partnering with them to get the information out there. We're working with Cesar Conde, the great CEO there, and their team, and it's just, Comcast is a corporate member of our chamber. They own Telemundo and NBC, Universal Studios. So, you know, we're leveraging our corporate members and saying, this is the time you need to step up and do contracting with Hispanic and women-owned businesses during this difficult time, but also get the information out to our community. It's a 60 million base community, 80% born here, but 70% are also Spanish speaking and English speaking. And our language is a beautiful language. It's a great way of doing business, but it's also a great way of communicating what we need. So if we need what we need, we just need to say, discúlpame, pero ese es mío.
Yes,
excuse me, but that's mine. So it's you can be humble and pointed at the same time and say, I need that right now to survive and create jobs. Excuse me, but it's my turn to do this. And so let's not be humble.
And that's something we say in our asset leadership training, right? One of our common values that we have as a community is the humility piece. And it's a beautiful value to have. But the key is understanding when is it that you need to adapt to be effective as a leader, as an influencer, right? And right now is the time that we need to speak up for what we deserve when it comes to our businesses, our families, right? Our needs. So Ramiro, mil gracias. We'll send over any remaining questions that we have, but thank you for being our guest with Cafecito con HACE. Guys, thank you so much for joining us today. Gracias, Ramiro.
Gracias a ti, Patricia. Un honor. Hasta luego.
Hasta luego. Bye-bye.